Section 7. The mathematics of collapse, urgent, stark. But behind the facade lurked the mathematics of catastrophe. Every dollar invested was backed by only 10 cents of real money. A 10% drop, and the margin investor lost everything. A 50% drop, and they owed the bank more than they earned in a year. By fall of 1929, smart money began to get nervous. Large institutional investors, pension funds, insurance companies, banks, saw warning signs ordinary people missed. First, economic indicators were deteriorating. Industrial production slowed, car sales fell, new home construction dropped, but stocks? They kept rising, ignoring reality. Second, smart investors understood margin math. They saw when 90% of market money is borrowed, any decline becomes catastrophe. Joseph Kennedy, father of the future president, later said, "When the shoe shiner started giving me stock advice, I knew it was time to sell." Third, insiders knew the Federal Reserve's plans. The central bank was preparing to raise interest rates. That would make margin loans more expensive and could trigger mass selling. Large players began quietly taking profits, selling in small portions so as not to crash the market prematurely. But by October, patience ran out. Some banks received insider information. The Bank of England planned to raise rates. That would force the Fed to follow suit. Section 8. Black Thursday, fast, chaotic, then heavy. Morning. October 24, 1929. New York's largest investment funds made a coordinated decision. Time to exit. They began selling. Large blocks, hundreds of thousands of shares simultaneously. Prices crawled down, first slowly, then in an avalanche. By noon, panic began. In one day, a record 13 million shares sold, 5 times the normal volume. Brokers couldn't process orders. Telephone systems overloaded. And the domino effect that Mitchell had unwittingly created was launched.
Ready with weight.
Domino 1. Falling prices forced banks to demand more money from margin investors. Domino 2. People had no cash for additional payments. They were forced to sell, crashing prices further. Domino 3. Falling prices made stocks useless as loan collateral. Banks stopped lending. The market lost liquidity. Domino 4. Banks that issued too many margin loans began to fail. The first to fall? Those who followed Mitchell's example. October 29th. Black Tuesday. The final crash. In one day, Americans lost $14 billion, more than the U.S. spent on the entire First World War. Section 9. Human tragedy, soft, somber, respectful. Behind the dry numbers hit human tragedies. Edward Hopkins, a mechanic from Detroit. Bought Ford stock for $5,000. His life savings. By November? Worth $200. The bank demanded an additional $3,000. Hopkins hanged himself in his garage. Mary Cafield, a teacher from Ohio, mortgaged her parents' house to buy Radio Corporation stock. After the crash, the bank repossessed the house. 3 generations found themselves on the street. In New York, lines formed not only at banks, but on bridges. Suicides reached record levels. The Brooklyn Bridge became a symbol of despair. Those who, just yesterday, considered themselves millionaires ended their lives there. Section 10. Mitchell's Reckoning. Judicial, reflective. What about Mitchell? In 1933, he was called before Congress. Senator Carter Glass asked, "Do you consider yourself responsible for the ruin of millions of American families?" Mitchell replied, "I wanted to give people the opportunity to get rich. No one forced them to buy stock." But justice caught up with Sunshine Charlie. Later in 1933, he was tried for tax evasion. $850,000 in unpaid taxes. He was forced to resign in complete disgrace. The man once called market savior became a symbol of greed and irresponsibility. Presenting both sides, American society was divided. The New York Times called him the architect of financial catastrophe, the man who turned the American dream into a nightmare. Ordinary Americans? They hated him. On New York streets, he was booed. One Detroit newspaper wrote, "Charles Mitchell stole more from us than any bank robber in history." A robber takes a bag of money. Mitchell took the future from an entire generation. But there were defenders. Many businessmen argued Mitchell didn't force anyone. People chose greed over caution. His former colleagues claimed Charlie was just in the wrong place at the wrong time. Any banker in his position would have done the same. As for National City Bank, paradoxically, it not only survived the crisis, but strengthened. After Mitchell's resignation, new management shut down risky operations, focused on conservative deposits and loans. The bank received government support as too big to fail. The collapse of competitors let National City absorb their assets for pennies. By 1935, the bank controlled an even larger market segment than before the crisis. Mitchell himself? He spent the rest of his life in relative obscurity. After the trial, he moved to Europe, worked as a consultant for small banks, returned to the U.S. In the 1940s, founded a modest investment company. Sunshine Charlie became an elderly man remembered only as a symbol of 1920s greed. He died in 1955 at age 78, never acknowledging his responsibility for the Great Depression. Section 11. Legacy and Lessons, Authoritative, Forward-Looking. The catastrophe Mitchell triggered changed the American financial system forever. In 1933, Congress passed the Glass-Steagall Act, separating commercial and investment banks. Goal? Simple. Never again allow bankers to gamble with depositors' money. The Securities and Exchange Commission was created to oversee the market. Bank deposit insurance was established. Strict requirements for margin trading were introduced. America swore, "This will never happen again." Serious. Historical weight. But the government also took more radical measures. April 1933. President Roosevelt signed an executive order that shook the foundations of the American economy. Private individuals were prohibited from owning gold. All Americans were required to surrender gold coins and bars to the government at a fixed price. Why? As long as people could demand gold for dollars, the government couldn't print money to fight the Depression. Gold confiscation allowed increasing the money supply and reducing deflation. But the price? Violating Americans' fundamental right to own precious metals. In 1 month, Americans surrendered more than 3,600 tons of gold, more than the current reserves of Russia and China combined. A year later, the government raised the official price of gold from $20 to $35 per ounce, earning billions on the confiscated metal. Section 12. Echoes today. Reflective, cautionary. The scars of the Great Depression remained for generations. The American economy took 10 years to recover. Millions forever lost faith in the stock market. An entire generation preferred to keep money under the mattress rather than in trust banks.
Parallel, clear, measured.
Today, almost a century later, history repeats with frightening accuracy. 50 million Americans trade stocks through smartphones. Margin loan volume has reached a record $900 billion. Apps like Robinhood promise the same thing Mitchell offered: make everyone an investor. 0 commissions. Trade like a pro. Invest your paycheck. A new generation invests in cryptocurrencies and meme stocks. Borrowing money on margin accounts. Same promises, of easy money. Same cheap loans, the same mechanism Mitchell created almost 100 years ago. The average American today owes more than they earn in a year. Margin trading has reached 1929 levels, and again, millions believe this time is different. Slow, powerful, memorable. Charles Mitchell's story is about how good intentions can lead to catastrophe. He really wanted to give ordinary people a chance to get rich. But his system turned the American dream into a nightmare for a quarter of the country's population. Every American should be a capitalist, Mitchell said in 1928. Everyone should invest, they say today. History doesn't repeat, but it rhymes. Next time you hear promises of easy money or calls to democratize finance, remember Sunshine Charlie and ask, who will really profit? End tag warm, inviting. Subscribe to the channel. There will be many more stories like this ahead.